So we will call our, David is here, isn't he? I thought I saw him.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm here, Josh.
On my screen. Called meeting to order at 5:30. And any adjustments to the agenda, Karen?
I have a couple, Josh.
Okay.
So under select board items, I will add Wilson's Wetlands Commission underneath broadband discussion.
Okay.
I will remove fire department overview and table that until the next meeting.
Okay.
And then I have a couple additions to town manager's report, but I will add them when I get there, because there's no action to be taken.
Okay. Sounds good.
You want a motion, Josh?
A motion to approve the minutes of October 21st and October 28th.
Yes, I'll second that if you've made that.
Sure. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of October 21st and October 28th. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. So then we will go to the warrants.
And I'll make a motion to approve and execute the warrants upon review.
All right, and I will second that. It's been moved and seconded to approve and execute the minutes upon completion of review. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, Karen, you want to go through those?
Through the warrants? Yes. So payroll warrant dated October 22nd, 2020 to November 1st, 2020 in the amount of $16,223.47.
I don't have any questions on that one.
Me either. Almost set.
Okay. Accounts payable warrant dated October 24th, 2020 through November 6th, 2020 in the amount of $87,354.73. On this warrant, you will see some of the social agency appropriations. And there is a charge to the COT Systems Incorporated. That would be for digitizing the land records, which we do have a grant for. Everything else is standard. So the County of Windham is our county taxes, which we pay twice a year in the amount of $10,793.50. So this is the second payment for the entire year. But we won't see that again either.
Oh, yeah, okay.
We also have some election poll workers that have been paid on this warrant as well.
Those are the $100 ones, presumably?
That is correct. And there were a couple refunds from property taxes because we did receive the homestead exemptions.
Okay. All right. I don't have any questions about that. You, David?
No, I'm all set.
Okay. All right. So then we move on to public comment on items not on the agenda. We have a fairly sizable number of people in attendance, participants. If anybody has any public comment they would like to make, please enter the chat, or if you want to speak up now, you're welcome to. Seems like maybe we don't have any public comment on items not on the agenda, so that will move us into Select Board items, and first up is Jonathan Johnson with elections town clerk results. You're on mute.
You're unmuted.
Thank you for this opportunity. I think yesterday went really well. How to run an election during a pandemic is one of the things that keeps town clerks up at night. But I worked with Tom Goddard, who graciously gave us the fire station. We had one-way traffic. We built sneeze guards. We hired extra staff to clean between voters. The voters that I talked to as they were exiting thought the system worked really well. We had one rather aggressive anti-masker, but we resolved that issue on the advice of the Secretary of State's office, who was just awesome through this election. Jim Condos and his staff, Will Senning, the head of the elections division, just when I was dealing with the anti-masker, I called for advice. He answered on the second ring, gave me good advice. We solved the problem, and it was just awesome. You know, I felt the confrontation was rather aggressive, and you know, he gave us a solution. The solution worked, and hopefully that's the end of it. I also want to recognize Karen Astley, the town manager. We identified a grant from the Center for Tech and Civic Life, which is a Palo Alto-based nonprofit. It's funded by Google and Facebook, Rock the Vote, a bunch of other nonprofits, Rockefellers, and they gave us a $5,000 grant that we used to build the sneeze guards. Today, ServPro was in the fire station disinfecting, you know, because we had, I'm going to talk about the stats a little bit later, but we had over 300 people go through there yesterday, plus the poll workers there all day. And while we were, you know, wiping down the polling spots and the doorknobs and all of that stuff with disinfecting wipes that were, again, provided by Jim Condos's office, you know, it was great that Tom's space is safe and disinfected, and we couldn't have done that without the grant for that Karen helped us get. The post office was just unbelievable. Yesterday afternoon after 5, the postmaster brought some ballots that had come in on the late truck. You know, she didn't have to do that, but the fact that she cared enough that those votes were counted means a lot to me. And you know, most people voted by mail, and just the volume that went through that post office was extraordinary. And you know, they really should be recognized for doing a great job. My poll workers were awesome. I only had 3 returns, but I had people that I turned away. There were some online efforts to recruit young people to work the polls, and I had at least a dozen emails from people who wanted to volunteer. It turns out that we pay them, but you know, there was no shortage of poll workers. Normally, on a normal election, I have 4 in the morning, 4 in the afternoon. I had 6 this time, and the extra 2 were cleaners. You know, wiping down everything. We bought disposable golf pencils so that we didn't have to disinfect. A lot of those, the voter was free to keep the pencil if they wanted it, or we have them sitting in tubs. So once the COVID's done, we can use them in future elections. And then just the town reached out. Mike and Kim Costco at the general store gave us coffee and a big box of pastries at breakfast. Ruby McAdoo and the Everyone Eats program brought us dinner, you know, for the poll workers. And then Zach Goldberg and the Mockingbird Tavern brought trays of food, chicken enchiladas that were delicious for the counters. And it, you know, it could not have been better. We also got another grant from the Secretary of State's office that paid for the secure drop box. So the town's investment in that secure drop box was $38, which was, you know, a pretty good buy, I think. So 1,529 voters participated in the election yesterday. 1,223 of those were absentee, which made our life much better. There was legislation passed, thank you, Mike, to allow us to process a lot of those ballots beforehand. In the 30 days prior to the election, we could take the absentee ballots and run them through the tabulator. My assistant and I ran through 1,150 by Monday afternoon. So we only had, 400 that we really needed to handle yesterday, which made the counting much easier. The counters were done just after 9 o'clock, and we had results that we thought were accurate and reliable. And then Kim and I have some reporting that we have to do to the Secretary of State's office. That took another 45 minutes or so, but like I said, I was home at 10:30, so it couldn't have gone better. 306 in-person voters, and when you do the math, that works out to 77% of Putney registered voters participated in the election. That's up from 72% in the 2016 presidential election. And the thing that really made me happy was in the primary, we had a lot of defective absentee ballots, over 30, which I think is a lot. If you don't sign your certificate envelope, if you don't return your unvoted primary ballots, your ballot can't be counted because it's deemed defective. We only had 5 in this election, with 400 plus more ballots than we had in the primary. And I think that's just really awesome that people in Putney know how to follow directions. If you want to know how Putney voted race by race, the best thing to do is to go to Google and Google Vermont town by town election results. That takes you to the Secretary of State's page, and you can look at every town in Vermont, including Putney, and you can see the map, and there's some anomalies. For example, in the governor's race, Putney, Brattleboro, Marlboro, and Burlington went for Zuckerman. The rest of the state went for Scott. And that says something perhaps about our community. I don't know what, but but you can look at those patterns and see what's what. But all in all, I think it went really well. I'm thrilled at the turnout. Obviously, I want everybody to vote. But, there are at least 200 voters that are on our challenge list. Those are people that the Board of Civil Authority think have moved out of Putney. And a lot of them I know have moved out of Putney because I've tried to send them mail and it's come back as undeliverable and unable to be forwarded. So there's probably only 200 or so Putney residents, maybe even less, that did not participate in the election. So the participation percentage, I think, is higher of active voters in Putney, and that's, I think, a great testament to our community. That's what I got.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All your hard work, and for everybody you pointed out that helped you through the process, and much appreciation from the select board, because we know we sure can't do it without you. So we're glad you're doing it.
Thanks for installing the Dropbox, Josh.
Yeah.
I think it worked really well, and I think it's going to be a nice thing to have it going forward.
Was it used quite a bit?
Oh, you would not believe it. Alyssa can see it from her office, and she would call out to me periodically, there's at least another dozen. And, we were emptying it 3 or 4 times a day. And I think our biggest day we had 86 returned through that Dropbox, which is good. I think more people use that than use the mail to return ballots, which is neither here nor there. But I'm just really impressed that 1,223 Putney residents voted absentee, which is just extraordinary. In 2016 was 400.
Yeah.
So,
Mike.
John, the law we passed to allow for the mail-in voting and the counting beforehand expires after this election. Is this something you think would be a good thing to have going forward?
I really like it when people vote. I always aim for 100% voter participation. And I think the way that only active voters were sent a ballot is a good process. The fact that when ballots were sent, they were not allowed to be forwarded helped me upgrade my voter checklist, because I have another probably 30 active voters who don't live at the address that we think they live at. What I'd really like to see moving forward is a compact between states. You know, when I register somebody to vote from out of state, the Secretary of State's office automatically sends an email to the state where they left. And I don't see other states doing that. And, you know, we have so many transients here with the education community. You know, perhaps somebody comes and teaches at Putney School for 3 or 4 years, and then they find a job that's a better fit for them or whatever. And they move. I know they've left town, but I don't know where they went, and I can't take them off the voter roll because I don't know that they've registered in another state. And so cooperation between the states, I think, would be a good thing to look at going forward. I know Secretary Condos has talked about that before, and Vermont does just a super good job with our voter registration system. You know, I had registrations come in through the DMV system of voters who had already voted in other states or in other towns in Vermont. And I knew that. And so that we didn't register them until today so that they couldn't vote twice. You know, the system, just the towns, you know, all the town clerks do their part. The system works and we get really good information. And I don't think anyone, you know, was able to vote twice. You can't vote in more than one town. If you do vote in more than one town, you're going to get caught. And mailing a ballot, I think worked.
Good. Well, thank you again. And we'll see how it evolves before the next one. So, all right.
Can I ask a question, Josh?
Yeah, go ahead, Alan.
I think that Mike was asking John if he thought we should renew the law to allow early counting of mail-in ballots.
We could do that before. We just had to jump through some more hoops. And Putney, since I've been clerk, we've done that. You know, when you have a big volume of absentee, we want to get them run through the tabulator before election day. And what we had to do before, Alan, you were probably in the meeting. We asked the BCA for approval, and we did it the day before. That worked pretty well. But you know, when you have the volume of absentee that we had this time, you know, we processed absentee ballots on three different days to get the 1150 that we processed before. So yes, Mike, I think that would be helpful.
Good. Thank you. All right. Again, thanks. We've got a lot on our agenda, so I'm going to try and keep things moving along. And our next item for discussion is broadband discussion. And this is Mike and Core. And again, we have a pretty extensive agenda. So I don't know what you guys have intended, but if you can just give us what you got relatively quickly, that would be much appreciated.
Well, we will try and keep it brief, and I need to right after I get done here. I have an uncle who's turning 80, and we're going to be celebrating him online after this, since we can't get together in person. But so I'll try and keep it brief. I think basically we would ask the select board to make appointments to the Deerfield Valley CUD Planning Committee. Core and I have been talking, starting the researching for this, and trying to put together a report for you to, as you move forward. What we've come to understand is that being part of that CUD planning group, really has no obligation, and it's our sense, and Core, if we're, I hope I'm speaking for you as well, that's the best way for us to get the best information. It doesn't obligate us to anything, and a very similar vote by the select board can pull us out of that. We're in the process of trying to discern what they can do, what Consolidated can do, but we feel like if we don't get our foot in that door, and that turns out to be a good avenue for us, then we may be left at the altar, as to say. So, Core, can you share your perspective on that, please?
Yeah, hi everyone. I just want to remind you that I'm here not on behalf of BCTV. I'm just here as a Putney resident, and I watched the proposal by Consolidated at one of the last meetings, and also attended the webinar about the CUD. And as I understand it, having the select board appoint Mike and myself to the CUD on behalf of Putney, and having Putney join the CUD at this time, does not preclude the town from deciding to contract with Consolidated or another company if they want to, if that seems like the right thing to do, because it can go faster and get to certain locations. And but I do understand, and partly from a conversation with Steve and John, who's here attending from the CUD, that this is a great time for Putney to join, because they have not done the planning for the CUD yet. And if we are not a part of it, then they might decide to deploy in such a way that we really can't be gotten to for many, many years until everybody's done, let's say. To me, because the CUD doesn't obligate the town to do anything but appoint us at this point, and because this is an opportunity to get on the ground floor of something that's going to be a publicly owned infrastructure run by a management that's also publicly controlled. And it's an excellent product because it's symmetrical fiber service to the premises, which means it's the same up as down. And you know, all of you who are attending Zoom calls right now may not know we're using upload as well as download. So all these packages that we're seeing that are, you know, high speed download but no upload are not as good as this product. I hope I didn't get into the weeds too much there. And this is our one opportunity to get a service that's not commercial, so that it is going to go to the last mile. It is going to be available to every single resident of the town. And we're never going to get a commercial entity who's willing to do that. So even if the town wants to contract with a company to do the commercially viable parts in a faster way, this still could come in and fill in the non-commercially viable parts. So to me, it's really a fairness principle that the town wants to serve, has to serve everyone. Otherwise, some parts of Putney will continue to be unserved. So that's basically my argument and my interest in pursuing it. I don't know, Stephen, if you have any more things to throw in there.
So it looks to me like that there's one representative. We have a copy of the resolution that there would be one representative and then two alternates. Would the representative be one of you two, and or who would the alternates be?
That's correct.
That's
So,
like, you don't have to have two alternates. You'll be fine with a representative and alternate. The law says you can appoint up to two alternates. And that's because we want to make sure that every town is adequately represented at every vote taken by the board.
Okay. And so, Core, that representative would be you, is that correct?
Either way, but yeah, that would be fine.
Okay. It doesn't sound to me like there's a downside to doing this. I only saw the resolution this afternoon, so I hadn't had time to process too much. But David, do you have any questions?
I said, I have two resolutions in front of me. Which one are we looking at? That's my first question. I see
So
the
you're
one.
looking, yeah,
Go ahead, Karen.
you're looking at the one from Deerfield Valley Communications, which was sent to me last night from Core.
So have we sent them a letter?
No.
The second section, have we? We haven't.
Just-
Okay, may I
Steven.
just
Yeah.
let me, the only thing that's necessary is that the board, the select board of the town has to vote on a motion to join the Deerfield Valley Communications Union District. And if that's approved, then it's in the minutes. The clerk will attest the minutes. And then the other form is one that is regarding the appointments. So you do have to make a motion to officially appoint your representatives to be then accepted formally as a member town at our next meeting. The next meeting is it's next Wednesday, actually, November 11th.
Okay, thank you.
So, but David's question then, so we would need to submit that letter, and then it's because we have not already submitted a letter, is that correct?
I
That's
think they're
correct.
one and the same. Yeah, well, yeah, I think they're one and the same. We're not in any sequential necessity here. You can do this all at once. If you have the
Okay.
motion on the board and you have the appointments made, then you're going to be accepted at the next meeting. Probably by unanimous consent, I'm going to make the motion if you so decide. And then Core or whoever your representative has appointed will be a voting member immediately for the rest of the meeting.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, Mr. Fairman.
communications union districts are governed by Vermont statute. Now, it has been stated that if we wish, we can withdraw later on. I would suggest that before you act, we check Vermont statute to be sure that we can withdraw at will, as opposed to perhaps some of the difficulties that schools have had in withdrawing from school districts. I also would mention that one of the speakers said that no telecommunications provider or internet service provider, other than she's talking about EC Fiber, will be sure to go to the very last house. That is precisely what Consolidated Communications said they would do in their presentation. So that's simply a clarification to what was said, but I would suggest that we check the law on the subject of whether we can withdraw before we go into this.
Okay, that's taken under advisement. Thank you. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think what we could do, if there's a meeting next Wednesday, I think what we could do is go ahead and approve the resolution to submit a letter and to appoint Core Trowbridge as our representative and Mike Mrowicki as an alternate. All of this contingent upon discovery of to make sure that we definitely. Core, you're pretty confident that statutorily we can pull out of this if need be?
I asked Steve and John that same question because of the question that was brought up at the last meeting. Stephen, you want to jump in? Having an audio issue?
I'm muted. Okay, yeah. Well, just not to repeat myself, but the terms of membership are after the original formation by the town vote of 2 or more towns at town meeting to form a communications union district, and any other subsequent towns can join by virtue of the vote and decision of their legislative body, which in your case is the select board. And at the same time, that's the terms and conditions by which you can withdraw. In the case of my town, Marlboro, we voted at town meeting. We got to have a special meeting or have a town meeting to withdraw. But in your case, the select board, future select board, whenever, makes that decision. based on the merits of what you perceive to be the benefits of being a member of the CUD. This is in the law. I actually have the law here, but I'm not going to read the details. People need to look to it themselves. I'll just call your attention to the title if you want to look it up in the legislature. And that is Title 30, Public Service, Chapter 82, Communications Union Districts. This outlines all the terms and conditions of forming a CUD, as well as what happens if there were bankruptcy, what liability once again assures the towns that no taxpayer will be liable for any failure on the part of this initiative to get everyone connected. That's section 3556.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
Since the previous speaker has the statute in front of him, could he please read the section on withdrawing from a communications union district?
Yeah, it's 30 pages. It's a little bit long, but I'll try to find it for you if you just hang on, okay?
Yeah.
Talk about Australian ballot if people are going to vote. All special meetings.
I just emailed this
Okay, I got
statute
it.
to Karen, and she
It's
could
section
forward it to the select board if
3081.
you'd like.
Hang on.
It's section
Okay.
3081, withdrawal of a member municipality. A district member may withdraw from the district upon the terms and conditions herein specified. 1, prior to a district pledging communications plant net revenues or entering into long-term contract. This is if the district was actually doing anything that involved the members of the town. If a majority of the voters of the district member present and voting at a meeting duly warned for such purposes to withdraw from the district, this is the case of Marlborough, the vote shall be certified by the clerk municipality presented to the board. Thereafter, the board shall give notice to the remaining district members of the vote to withdraw and shall hold a meeting to determine if it is in the best interest of the district to continue to exist. Representatives, this might precipitate the dissolution of the entire CUD, but that's the way it goes. Representatives of the district members shall be given an opportunity to be heard at such meeting together with any other interested persons. After such a meeting, the board shall declare the district dissolved, or it may declare that the district shall continue to exist despite the withdrawal of such member. The members of the membership from the withdrawing from the municipality shall terminate after a vote to withdraw.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
Thank you to the previous speaker for reading that. I note that withdrawal would have to be done by a regular or special town meeting.
Yep.
So the question is, do we want to take that risk at this time when we don't know whether they're actually going to get anywhere? Now, clearly, they want to get as many members as possible right away. But the fundamental question is, are they going to succeed? But among other reasons, because they talk about revenue bonding. In other words, it is the people who sign up for it who pay the bond. Well, the Vermont Bond Bank does not currently provide that revenue bonding. And an interesting question is, why do they not do so? Presumably it is because they either do not think it's a good idea or because they've not yet considered it. I don't know which it is, and I'm corresponding with the executive director of the Vermont Municipal, with the executive director of the Municipal Bond Bank on this subject. And I really can't get to the bottom of what is happening there. Further, EC Fiber is a potential service provider, but so are incumbent Consolidated Communications and Comcast Infinity. And incumbent First Light Fiber, formerly Silvernet hereabouts, may be a wild card, having currently abandoned new residential customers to focus on commercial and government customers. In addition to these wired providers, incumbent Verizon, VTEL, and their competitors are potential wireless providers as they build out new 5G technology. And there may be others. Technical feasibility is a given. Proven technologies exist in theory and in practice for use by all of these providers. EC Fiber's growing debt service is a consideration, and Burlington Telecom's recent fate is cautionary in this regard. And as I mentioned, the unavailability of telecommunications revenue bonding via the Vermont Bond Bank is a consideration as well. So I'm wondering whether we actually know enough at this point that we should commit the town of Putney to joining this district without considering the alternatives, such as going it alone as a municipality, which we certainly can do.
Well, it seems to me that the whole argument, and correct me if I'm missing something, is that we are not obligating ourselves beyond having a representative to this, and we can remove ourselves from this at any time that we choose. You're right, given that we meet the necessary requirements based on that. But for example, I mean, we have Stephen, I think you said that if we approved it in a select board meeting, then that would mean that it would be only the select board that was required to remove us.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah, in response to Mr. Fairman's concern, I didn't get to the second. Number 2 of that section says, a district may vote to withdraw in the same manner as the vote for admission to the district. So it's the way you go in is the way you go out. And,
Okay.
you know, it'll be different. The first 5 original members of our Communications Union District will have to withdraw by special vote of the public, of the citizens, of the voters. I don't have any, I can't give any assurance about to what extent revenue bonds would be issued. I know that VEDA loan would be the first and most applicable to this purpose. But if you read the business plan, it's pretty clear about the combination of sources, grants, and bonding that would be necessary, and it would have to occur incrementally unless there is greater support from the state or federal government regarding bridging the digital divide that exists across this nation for people who live in less densely populated areas. There's just no profit margin for the companies. I've been waiting for 15, 20 years in Marlboro. It's not happening.
Mr. Chairman.
From our perspective, we said, like you said, there really doesn't seem to be a significant downside to joining the project at this time. It doesn't preclude the town making a different choice. And for instance, the way it could play out possibly is if the town's interested in having Consolidated come in and do fiber to the premises for the commercially viable locations it's willing to go to. But then one of your questions at the last select board meeting was, oh, and the town's going to own that in 20 years? Do we really want to own that, right? Well, one scenario is possibly that the town would contract with the CUD to manage that. So then you have a publicly controlled entity that could manage something like that. So as Stephen has explained it to me, there's going to be a lot of public-private partnership in rolling out this CUD in a lot of different scenarios. They aren't set in stone right now. But, you know, for me, thinking about that the unserved and underserved parts of Dummerston are going to get cabled up or be part of this project while the unserved and underserved parts of Putney that are bordering it are not. That seems like a huge waste. Those things should all be done together. It makes the most sense when you aren't applying town boundaries to these things, because all of us on this call know how roads just go between towns. So a regional perspective is going to have the best economies of scale. So that's why I just think, yeah, there's plenty of details to be worked out. But this is why I'm willing to join the project on behalf of Putney. And if it seems like down the road that's not the way we want to go, that's okay too.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
Now that the next previous speaker has read the rest of the statute, indicating that if you as the select board vote for us to be represented, that you as a select board can vote to remove us. I retract my objection. However, I would add that everything that these people are talking about is actually Vermont statute. Now, I have read the statute and I have studied the statute, and the most important things are the Communications Union District is going to own the physical plant. The law says so. It also says that the Communications Union District will be financed by revenue. There can be no possible financial claim upon towns to sustain the district. So whatever they come up with, they're going to be facing two key points. One is adoption rate, how many people sign up, and the other is retention rate, how many people keep the service. Now, both of these are actually unknowns, and there have to be reasonable estimates, and they have to. It has to be looked at in terms of how low can it go before it doesn't work. Now, I don't know at this point whether they have done this analysis. I'm getting ready to write and publish a commentary on the business plan, and that's one of the things that I will be looking at. And by the way, I am professionally trained and experienced to do this, but it's actually the quality of my commentary will be my qualification or not.
Okay, good. Thank you. Well, it sounds like, given what we now know, that there isn't a downside to doing this now. It sounds very clearly that there's a lot of homework to do, but that you know, being part of the planning process for this is going to be a benefit to us one way or the other. I'm assuming also that CORE will end up learning a lot about the overall process, which would be to our advantage regardless of which way we go. So I would entertain, David, a motion to approve the submission of a letter of application to the CUD and the appointment as CORE Trowbridge as representative and Mike Mrowicki as an alternate. Then we might add another alternate at a future time.
So moved. Well said. I couldn't say that again. So moved.
And I'll second that. If there's...
Mr. Chairman, per the Vermont Open Meeting Law, would you please read the actual resolution?
Let's see. Does somebody have it right in front? I have to scroll back to find it. Somebody have it right in front of them? I've got it right here. So the resolution reads, a resolution appointing a representative to the governing board of the Deerfield Valley Communications Union District. Whereas the town of Putney has been informed of the formation of the Deerfield Valley Communications Union District, DVCUD, under the provisions of 30 VSA Chapter 82, and whereas, as provided in Section 3082 of said chapter, the town of Putney has written to the governing board of said district to request admission to the district, and whereas the select board of the town of Putney has reason to believe its application for admission to the district will be accepted, and whereas, as provided in Section 3059 of said chapter, the legislative body or each member town shall appoint annually on or before the last Monday in April a representative and one or more alternates to the governing board of the district for a one-year terms. Now therefore be it resolved that the select board of the town of the Putney hereby appoints the following representative and one or more alternates to the governing board of the Deerfield Valley Communications Union District for terms of 1 year each. And those representatives would be CORE Trowbridge as representative and Mike Mrowicki as alternate. And this is labeled adopted a regular meeting of the select board of the town of Putney duly held on the 4th day of November 2020. So if there is no further discussion related to that resolution, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you all for your time.
Thanks, everyone.
And thank you, Cor and Mike for your willingness to participate. And again, however we can be supportive or try and help find other people if you need them, et cetera, keep us posted.
Thank you. We will be in touch, and pardon my having to leave now, but as I shared, I'm going to go to a family celebration. I just want to quickly say before I leave that I understand there's on the agenda is also talk about the wetlands in Putney, and I certainly support that and hope the select board can move forward in support of this. So thanks again, and good night to everybody.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye, Mike.
Have a good night. Okay, so we are going to table the fire department overview that was listed as item C, and that would move us on to how much debt should the town of Putney get?
Josh,
yeah.
Excuse me, can we have the wetlands?
Oh, sorry, yes.
And then we'll move on to the.
Yeah, okay, so our next, sorry, you had requested that. So our next item will be a discussion of the Wilson wetlands, and I'm not up to date on what we're discussing about this, Karen. Is there somebody here to present?
Yes, there's several people. Mary Quinn is here.
Yeah, I'll start out. Can you hear
Thank
me?
you, Mary.
Yes.
When we talked with you last, we talked about putting signs up on the wetland, and we've talked a lot about it. The committee is called Wilson Wetlands Stewardship Committee, which is a committee of the Putney Conservation Commission. And I think Ann Carey is one of the callers. Ann, are you on the phone?
We should have them identify, Josh.
Ann is here.
Ann's there, okay. And Alan Forsythe is with Alan. It looks like Cole Freedom wasn't able to make it. He was planning on it. Anyway, we have come up with wording for the Wilson wetlands, and we wanted basically to share it with you. We've been working with Karen on it, and also the Conservation Commission approved it. So I don't know. I sent it to you, but I'll just read it. The thing that I left off of it was Town of Putney. But please protect this fragile plant and animal habitat and drinking water supply area. No hunting, trapping, fishing, or swimming. We also created a Gmail account so that if people wanted information, they wouldn't necessarily have to call Karen. We are always in touch with her anyway. So we would have that on there too. So some people have asked why no fishing or swimming, and you may not be aware that the beavers were building a dam underneath the bridge, and it took us about 7 to 8 weeks to get them to stop. They could have built a very good dam there, and in the middle of it, I found that the snapping turtles buried themselves in the mud, and I just about stepped on it. So I don't think it's wise for somebody to be walking around down there. And there really isn't any place to swim. Hopefully at some point, maybe if the wetland revised itself, then we could revise this sign. So I don't know if I printed it out so people could see it, but
Nice,
this is
Mary.
not what the sign will look like. It's just, I just typed it up.
So I have questions and a comment.
Okay.
So is that sign going to have a blue background with white lettering?
I don't think we talked at all about that. We haven't.
Okay.
Lots of times natural areas use green and white, not blue. I
Well, I
that
know
you,
it's a drinking, it's a protected area, and the sign that's down there now has a blue background with the white lettering. So, I mean, it's pretty prominent. But
Might be worth inquiring. I don't know whether that would be, who that would be, but it might be worth inquiring whether there's a recommendation from whoever
State of
makes
Vermont.
the recommendation. Yeah, I mean, that
Yeah.
would be.
I also wondered why there is only one of those signs going east and
I
not
wondered
west.
too. Yeah.
Because, you know, people are coming down that hill and doing whatever as well as going through. So
Mary, will you be ordering 2 signs?
we haven't talked about that either. I think we were going to work with you on that. Yeah. Okay.
I also want to make a comment to the select board. So back when the select board made this committee stewards of the Wilson Wetlands property, we basically gave them charge to do pretty much what they need to do to protect that property. And this committee is here tonight for your support for the signage and to continue to, you know, do what we can to support the group to preserve that whole area. And I really want to state too that I've been down there, I took pictures of the starter dam, and I was impressed with what the beaver have done with it, and it looks really good. It looks strong, but I'm not a beaver expert by any means, but I do like what I'm seeing down there. So again, this is, you know, it's an important area for a lot of different reasons, and I think we need to continue supporting this group.
Also, I just wanted to mention, this is a little bit of an aside, and I don't really want to take much more time, but I met somebody from Arkansas down there early in the summer, and he came to Sandhill Wetlands because he saw it on eBird, and he was going to one place in every state to take pictures of birds. So he was impressed by what he saw, so that's why he chose Sandhill. So it really is a special place. Those of us having walked, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Mary, I didn't mean to cut you off. I think
No.
Eva had a comment.
I think it's way overdue that we have those signs, and forever I've wanted to see the speed limit down to 25. 30 miles an hour around there is like crazy. It's crazy.
That's a whole nother, that's a whole nother issue.
Yeah, well, I'm bringing it up
is
now.
25.
I'm bringing it up now. It doesn't have to be, it just, we need to think about that. It's crazy. The school children walk along that road. The kids from Landmark come over and walk that road. All of us, old people, young people, we're walking through an amazing habitat there. What a gift that we have that and that we've saved it. And that's where our drinking water comes from too. But I'd really like to see it considered in the future, not as a requirement with this request for these signs, but that we consider that.
I think Aunt just said that it is 25.
But it's often not observed, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I experience would tell me probably, Eva, the almost more important thing, because as you well know, enforcement is difficult even in the best of circumstances, but probably increased signage. And I mean, this signage will obviously increase some awareness, but I hate to recommend increased signage in an otherwise natural area, but otherwise, you know, slow children, so on and so forth, is usually the recommendation from the state. You know, it's a pretty in-depth process to get well, we can just make the decision, but to get a study, et cetera, to recommend changing the speed limit. But if it is 25, we could consider increased signage. That might be a conversation to have with Brian, see what we can do.
Okay.
Okay, well, that's all we have. So
So do we need a resolution for this, or are we just saying,
I don't think you do.
Ellen, or you?
We wanted your input.
Ellen?
Josh, Cynthia Major has a question.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
I
I
just
can't
want-
see it. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I live on Sand Hill Road, and just wanted to comment that I just see so many people out walking and enjoying the wetland. And even during COVID, there's much more foot traffic, and it's just wonderful to see people out enjoying the wetland and enjoying the road. And it's a really special place. A lot of photographers, people fishing, people watching the birds. You know, it's really unique and very special to Putney. So I think I really think, you know, all that the town can do to support it and to keep the vandalism from happening and keep limit down. I strongly support all of that. Just wanted to say that.
Good, thank you. I mean, I hope it's clear that the town has been, that the select board has been very supportive of this all along, and I don't think there's any question as to the select board's support for this being an accessible area. I think the only question I raised previously was the question of why we would not allow people in the water, and I hear what you're saying, Mary, that there are dangers there that make sense for people not to be in the water, but
Well, also the turtles were living, if you remember, most of the summer there was no water in the pond.
Right. Yeah.
So they were all coming down to the bridge, and people actually were picking them up, and they really shouldn't be doing that. But
yeah.
I did when I was a kid. So, but all of the turtles burrow in the mud. So anyway, just keep them safe. But the fish, I saw 5-inch fish, which is a big deal.
This is Ann. I just also like in the swimming regard that this whole area downstream of the Sand Hill Road Bridge, Sockett's Brook in that area is pretty destabilized since 2012. And a lot of the things that have happened and continue to happen have caused deep holes in the downstream section. The stream is incising, they call it, where the stream bed gets deeper and deeper, the sidewalls cave in, it gets wider, it gets deeper. And also there's a phenomenon called head cuts, which take those deep areas and bring them upstream, and that kind of thing will continue going unless they're stopped by one of the beaver dams, which they are now. But also the stream has cut down through some of the clay layers, so in terms of swimming or wading, you can be walking along one of those shallow clay layers where the whole stream bed used to be, and then suddenly it drops off like down to 4 feet very rapidly, where the clay layer has been broken through and the sediment under the clay layer has been washed away. And so it's very uneven and not particularly safe downstream of the Sand Hill Road Bridge. Just wanted to get that in there.
Thanks, Ann. Eva? You're on mute.
Whoops.
I'm sure we all remember when someone was using it as their restaurant compost center there. Does anybody remember that?
Yeah, I know.
Down in the
was
parking
going.
area.
All right,
Yep.
so I think these signs are being wonderful. And somewhere in the sign that this belongs to you, or this belongs to us, or this belongs to the whole community, or this belongs to the town, that we understand that. And these signs will be wonderful. Thank you for all the people that worked on it.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Eva.
Eva. So,
Okay, so I don't think we probably need a resolution. I think that this just falls under the purview of the Wilson Wetlands group. So I would say, Karen, my guess is as to the answer as to why there's only one drinking water watershed area sign is that there probably was a second one at some point, and it has long since disappeared. I don't remember, but that would be my guess. But we might want to find out and replace it if that was the case, and or put another one up, because certainly it could be visible both directions. So,
Josh, excuse me, this is Ann again. Speaking of disappearing signs, we had the turtle crossing signs, one at each end. And someone has picked those up, I assume, to put them in safekeeping. But no one at the town or in the committee knows where those signs went. And so if anyone out there listening in has any idea where they are, we'd love to know. If you can tell Karen or Mary.
Thank you, Ann, for that plea.
Okay.
I think I'm going to post a picture on iPutney.
That would be good, Mary.
Yeah.
Okay,
So thank you
good.
both, David and Josh.
You,
and to
Mary.
Karen.
You all set, Mary and Ann?
We're all set.
Okay.
Next item.
I have a question. I'm unmuted. How do I mute myself from a telephone? Does anyone know?
I can do that. I'm going to
Okay.
do it for you, Ann. Thank you, Alan and Alan.
Thank you.
And Alice, too.
I just want to say also, Karen, if you stay on that in your role as town manager long enough, you will become a beaver expert. I guarantee it, because all the people in this process will assure you that you will learn as much as you ever wanted to know about beavers, and then a bunch. And it's fun. It's good to know.
Well,
They're pretty special.
Watching what's happening down there. So.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Mary.
you.
Okay. So now we're on to how much debt should the town of Putney get? And Mr. Fairman, you submitted information related to this, pointing out that the VLCT, I believe it was, had published a statement about this. Would you like to speak to this topic?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. You have received a copy. Your colleague has received a copy. The town manager has received a copy. I'm going to, what I have to read is very brief, but I'll mention that in the PDF copy that can be obtained from the town manager, the documents I reference are hyperlinked.
Okay.
So during the October 21st, 2020 regular meeting of the Town of Putney Select Board, members wondered how much debt should the Town of Putney get. I volunteered to research this question. Coincidentally, the November-December 2020 issue of Vermont League of Cities and Towns News includes How Much Debt Should We Get? By Michael Gauguin, Executive Director and Secretary of Vermont Bond Bank. And now I'm going to quote briefly from what he wrote. First, what amount of debt service can be incurred while maintaining an affordable tax burden or other municipal fee structure? Second, what amount of debt is appropriate before crowding out other important areas of community spending? Third, what amount of debt will lenders provide and at what cost? The Bond Bank recently released our 2020 Vermont Bond Bank debt medians, which we will publish annually going forward. These medians provide a starting place within a larger capital and debt planning analysis to measure overall debt affordability. That's the end of the quotation. Another indicator of debt affordability and of annual budget affordability is median adjusted gross income reported by the Vermont Department of Taxes for Putney and other towns locally, regionally, and statewide. Now that everyone has an opportunity to consider the above, I plan to request the same agenda item at your November 18th, 2020 meeting so that you, including our new select person and interested Putney citizens, can discuss and consider each other's thoughts and opinions.
Okay, good. Well, thank you. And I haven't had time to review these things a whole lot yet. Do you have a sense of whether our current debt load is appropriate for the town of Putney, in your opinion, or have you not gotten that far into your analysis?
Mr. Chairman, I've not, like you, I've not yet proceeded that far. I simply shared what I already know, which is basically what's been published. Plus, I happen to know about the adjusted gross family income that one can get from the Vermont Department of Taxes, which of course is drawn from tax returns. I would add that throughout this, I cannot really state an opinion as to what I think should go on because I'm not a member of town government. But I'm suggesting that at the next meeting, people will have a chance to look at this and we can have an informed discussion about what seems to be appropriate. And of course, I shall contribute to that, but I shall in no way say, I think I know how it should be done.
Yeah, no, yes, I was asking, I guess, informally for an opinion, and I think that we tend to share a lot of opinions in our select board meetings. So I think it's fair to offer an opinion as long as you're not under the assumption that it will be accepted as a rule of law or something along those lines. So, well, thank you for highlighting these publications for us and this information, and we will revisit this again in 2 weeks.
Josh.
Yeah, David, go ahead.
First, I want to thank you, Mr. Fairman. I think this is a discussion we need to have for a really long time. And I think there's a lot more factors involved in making choices about this than the ones you mentioned. There's studies out there on the fiscal health of lots of towns in the state of Vermont. I think one was done by the Ethan Allen Institute, and it took the considerations you're talking about, the factors you're talking about into consideration and many more. And I've been looking into those, and there are formulas to put our annual financial reports figures into and see what the health, our fiscal health of our community is, and that will affect too what's a reasonable debt load. Each community is different, some richer than others, some have very profitable businesses that fill in the gaps and some don't, and lots of other factors. So thank you for bringing this up, and I'll have lots of things to say about it too if we do.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
If I may respond briefly to Mr. Babbitt, you are correct, and I would suggest that you bring these to the next meeting so that we can discuss them. And because you've brought that up, I will amplify that. One of the documents I cited from the Vermont Bond Bank, they have 11 governmental activities ratios, which they say are adapted from Moody's Investor Services definitions. And they are various ratios of different aspects of town finances. And basically what they're saying is run all these, calculate all these ratios and figure out what they mean to you, which of course is true. I mean, we are free to decide how much or how little debt we take on, but I agree with Mr. Babbitt that an informed decision is the best decision.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I think the other thing that's always important to remember, and I think that, you know, we have this discussion, I bring it up pretty much every town meeting, and that is that the people who tend to be in the room at town meeting are not always those who are most adversely affected by our town budget. And that that's a very important thing for all of us to remember. But the reality is that the people who show up at the meeting are the ones who either approve or don't approve the budget. This year may be an interesting exception to that. I'm not sure where the Secretary of State is falling on this yet, but given the circumstances of the pandemic, we may end up doing most of our town business by Australian ballot this year, and that would be an unusual circumstance for the budget, and it will be interesting to see whether it affects it in a way that we are not accustomed to with our regular town meetings. So just a comment. But all right, fire truck bond bank financing determination. Again, Mr. Fairman.
Well, Mr. Chairman, in that regard, I didn't add the sub-items 1 and 2, so someone else will need to speak to those. But because Chief Goddard has a scheduling conflict, he can't be present this evening. And also because of the previous agenda item where I presented some information, and Mr. Babbitt has brought up some additional information that everyone can consider for an informed discussion. I have nothing further to say on this agenda item at this time, but I too am curious, what do items 1 and 2 signify?
I can explain that.
Go ahead, Karen.
Thank you. I put them on there. The webinar for the Vermont Bond Bank that I will have to sit through is scheduled for November 19th at 2 p.m. And then the application will be due December 11th by 5 p.m. if we're moving ahead with the bond for the fire truck.
So that webinar, I'm assuming from how you stated your enthusiasm seemingly for it, I'm guessing that webinar is a required prerequisite to application?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Does that answer your questions, Mr. Fairman?
Yes, it does. I have a question for the town manager, though, arising from that. Do you know whether the webinar is open to the public?
I don't know that, but I can ask the question and get back to you, Mr. Fairman.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so Mr. Fairman, you are just dominating our agenda tonight. You appointment select board member, and I'm not sure whether you wanted to comment on this, Mr. Fairman. Just at our last meeting, you had written a statement and then it was published on IPutney, I believe. There was a rebuttal. Aileen Chute, who is, I believe, present tonight, but doesn't, I think, Aileen, if you want to address this, you're welcome to. Otherwise, I would just comment on it. I mean, essentially, Eileen's rebuttal was the fact that Mr. Fairman did not, in fact, have the authority to take this under his own doing, but I didn't object to it at our last meeting, and I think it was well intended on Mr. Fairman's part. So if anybody wants to comment further on that, they're welcome to.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
First, my authority is the authority of every citizen to ensure that laws are obeyed, and that is what I am doing. Secondly, I understand from the town manager that we have at least 3 letters of interest.
Correct.
How many do we have? May I ask the town manager?
We have 3.
3.
Okay. Is it perhaps time for the letters of interest to be presented?
Well, we have those letters of interest have been, 2 of them were previous. Well, they've all been. We have letters of interest from Charles Rubachuk, who lives up on West Hill Road, has a law background in New York, has been a resident of Putney for 5+ years now, owned property here for 13 years, I think, might be correct. And then we have a letter of interest from Aileen Chute, who is currently a lister of ours and also works in the appraisal office in Brattleboro, so does have town municipal experience. And then some people who were on these calls previously might remember that barron mcneil said early, I think she was the first one to express an interest and or a willingness to fill this position. And we did have a executive session in which we discussed select board appointment. That was a week ago tonight, I believe.
Yes.
I think that we are leaning. I have had conversations with both Aileen and with Mr. Robichuk, Charlie, I think he goes by. And both of them are seemingly interested in running for this position in March. Bara is really, David had a conversation with Bara, and she's really interested in just filling the interim position. And I think at this time that for us to choose one of 2 people who would be interested in running in March would potentially give that person an unfair advantage that we shouldn't necessarily make a choice for. And so David and I discussed it, and we think that we, unless opinions have changed, that we think that it's probably most fair and appropriate to appoint barron mcneil to this position, given her early interest and willingness, and also given that she is not interested in running for the position beyond March and therefore would not have an unfair advantage by being appointed at this late date. I see that Eva has a question. You're on mute. You're on mute. Eva. You're on mute.
Yeah, I support the idea of Bera not putting an unfair advantage over somebody who does want to run. And I think, as you all know, she was the librarian in Putney for a while. She went to Yale. She worked in a law office in Brattleboro. She's very bright. I think, David, you know that. You know her. Yeah, she's a very bright and capable person. And the idea that she'd be willing to serve for that limited amount of time would be a great boon to the community. So I hope that you all will proceed in choosing her.
I also want to point out that Alan Blood did call me the other night and expressed a willingness. I wouldn't say I necessarily heard a tremendous eagerness in his voice, but he did express a clear willingness. And I want to thank Alan for that willingness. But having had others who were already interested, he was willing to decline from pursuing the appointment. So I don't know whether others have any further comment. Mr. Fairman, if you were asking about seeing those letters, they are of public record because they are in our packet for tonight. They're very simple, just straightforward, wanting to express an interest in an appointment to this position. There's not a whole lot beyond that in any of the letters that I recall.
Mr. Chairman, I support your proposal to appoint Barra until town meeting.
Sorry, you're okay. I missed what
I said. I support your proposal to appoint Barra to fill the select board vacancy until town meeting.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Josh, how do we do this?
So, David, I noticed that Barra has been at almost all of our meetings. I don't see her present tonight, unless there is one caller one, who is not identified. If there's a caller that has not spoken,
This is Jamie. I was trying to speak and I couldn't unmute myself.
Hi, Jamie.
Hey.
I don't see Barra present tonight, but David, you did have a conversation with her, and we did receive a letter of interest from her. So it is a formal letter of interest because previously she had just expressed verbally. But so the process would be that you would make a motion, David.
I make a motion that we appoint Barra to fill the vacant seat for the select board until town meeting 121.
All right. So, and I will second that motion. Is there any further discussion?
I was trying to unmute before. Sorry, this is Jamie.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Jamie.
So I was on the call. We're doing a lot on this end, so sorry about that. I was trying to understand. Barra had shared maybe, and I don't know Barra. I've reached out to her a couple times. She had shared at one of the meetings that she did not feel comfortable with the Equity and Inclusion Committee and had created an alternative body to create space for community conversation around some of the discussions we've been having about, I think, the Black Lives Matter mural. And so I think the Equity and Inclusion Committee needs to come up for a vote in the next month to be renewed. And the new members need to be appointed. And so the only concern that I have is that if Barra's expressed concern and we have to have that process go through a vote in the next month, that I would just know that what that means for the Equity and Inclusion Committee.
Well, I think that would be a question that could come up in discussion at the time that I'm not sure you said they need to be renewed, and I'm not sure.
I thought the Equity and Inclusion Committee was created for a year and that it needs to be annually reviewed. And so I had not seen Bara at any equity and inclusion meetings, and then she had articulated concern that she didn't feel comfortable at equity and inclusion meetings, and then I had invited her to join us because I wanted to make sure, and reached out to her a couple times just to make sure she felt included. And so I just am thinking about, okay, so if we have to have a vote for equity and inclusion in the next month, what does that mean?
I can't answer for you. I think that it would be a discussion that we would have to have. And I think it would be appropriate for that question to come up probably in her presence as a select board member, since I don't feel like that would in any way change my opinion of her ability to serve in a select board position. It sounds like maybe there's a discussion that needs to be had surrounding that topic. And if we're coming up for a renewal of the decision on the Equity and Inclusion Committee, that might be a good time to have that. David, you got any comment on that?
No, I'm good with that where I am.
Okay. Jamie, is that okay?
I guess a question I would have in that case is if David and Josh, you would be inclined to support the reinstatement of the Equity and Inclusion Committee for another year.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. Point of order, Mr. Chairman. The speaker's intervention is not germane to the motion that is on the floor.
I agree with you, and I was going to point that out. Yeah, no, I mean, Jamie, it's not a question that should be asked related to this, for one, and for two, it would be premature for David or I to express that because we haven't had that conversation in open meetings. So I think that this would not preclude my interest and willingness in having Bara appointed to the board, and the status of the Equity and Inclusion Committee is not related to this appointment. So, so I think that's a conversation that can be had at the future time when we're relooking at equity and inclusion. So,
could I ask one final question?
Yeah.
In my experience, I need to know the position of my elected officials and the way that they're going to vote before I support them. And so I thought you were in the process of appointing her to the select board right now. And so what I was asking was if she wasn't going to support the Equity and Inclusion Committee, what is germane to the conversation is I would want to wait until we had a chance to hear from Bara about that before we went ahead and had a vote, because this has been
but this is not a vote from you, Jamie. This is a vote from David and I. This is a select board appointment. So, I mean, your point, I hear what you're saying, and I've said that this is a discussion that can be had when we're talking about the Equity and Inclusion Committee. But this is not an election for this person, and you have voiced your concern, and it's been heard, and it's been made public. But David and I are the ones who are appointing somebody, so it's not you're not electing her; we are appointing her. So it's a different.
No, I'm very clear on that. I was just wanting to express. You said, "Is there any discussion?" So I was trying to follow a path of logic and say that if we weren't able to get to a point where that was clear, that I wanted to ask that we pause on her appointment until the next meeting when we could hear about that discussion.
I would have to say that, I mean, I haven't even had a conversation about anything related to select board with Bara. So no, I do not feel that that's necessary. I think that this is, if I needed to know Bara's opinions about all the topics that were going to come before the select board, then we would never be able to appoint. So I think that that's a discussion that will come up later when the topic is visited, but I do not feel that it's germane to our appointment.
Okay, thank you for letting me express that concern.
Okay, thank you. Karen?
So Eileen Chute would like to speak, if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead, Eileen.
Coming on. Hi. Sorry, I was actually on the road in my car when we were having this discussion, so I wasn't able to speak up. I just wanted to say that I fully support this action. It makes a lot of sense to me, and I do intend to put my name in on the ballot for March. And Jamie, we can have a discussion about the Equity Inclusion Committee as part of my election. I don't personally think it's germane to this discussion either. And that's all I have to say, guys. Thanks a lot.
Good, thanks, Eileen. All right, so it's been moved and seconded to appoint Barron McNeil to the position of Select Board through town meeting day in March of 2021. Is there any further discussion? I don't see anything in the chat and I don't hear anything, so no further discussion. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, good. Thank you, Vera, for your willingness to do this, and we look forward to seeing you at the next meeting.
Welcome, Bear.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you. That's progress.
That's progress. There you go. All right. So social bias training quote. I had a little bit of, Karen sent out to us earlier today a proposal from Mary Gannon and Dottie, I don't remember Dottie's last name.
Dottie Morris.
Dottie Morris, but they work together. I had time to look at it briefly, but I have not reviewed it in depth. It seems thorough and to cover the topics that we feel would be appropriate. David and I have met with Mary, and I subsequently have had a conversation with her, and I believe David has also. We certainly were both very comfortable that Mary, or my sense was that we were both very comfortable that Mary would be well qualified for this. Her qualifications certainly bear that feeling out. She's got in-depth education related to this, and I haven't met Dottie, but Dottie also has been in the position of, I think her role is Vice President of Equity and Inclusion at Keene State College, I believe is her title. I might be misstating that, but where she's been involved in equity and inclusion since 2008. And both of them have PhDs related to this topic and seem very well equipped for this kind of work and have done extensive work with various municipalities and state agencies in Vermont and elsewhere. So, Karen, I don't know whether you have anything to say about this, or we just received the proposal this afternoon. Is that correct?
That is correct. And so the training and the meetings are going to be broken out. So the first responders would be one group that Dottie and Mary would meet with. The select board and the town employees would be another group. And then also it looks like there would be subgroups of town employees and select board, and then a combined meeting, diversity and equity committee and select board members. So that kind of looks like the training schedule. I haven't been able to read through it yet as well. I did meet with Mary and Dottie through GoToMeeting, and from that meeting, this is the proposal that they have prepared for the town of Putney.
Given the scale of the proposal, Karen, is it necessary for us to put it out to a wider bid or not? I can't remember what the total number. Can you remind me what the total number is? It's
the total cost is $6,420. Josh, given the time frame that the select board voted for town employees to have training, which is to the end of this year. I'm not sure we're going to have time to put it out to bid, one. And two, I don't know who would be qualified to actually entertain a second or a third bid on this particular training.
So
I did, go ahead, David.
just the fact that we've got this ball rolling, doesn't that satisfy the fact that we've started this process before the end of the year already? Do we have to actually have gone to a meeting to satisfy what we passed?
My opinion would be no, not necessarily. I think that given that we just received this proposal this afternoon, I would suggest that perhaps we table any decision on it till our next meeting. And between now and the next meeting, maybe we do a little bit of homework on who else in the general neighborhood would be qualified to do this kind of work. Mary and Dottie have come highly recommended through, I know that they've worked fairly extensively with Brattleboro.
Yes.
And I think that they come with local good recommendations and qualifications. So they seem very appropriate for this. But I do think, given the cost, which does not seem exorbitant for what they're offering, but that it would, at least in the interest of due diligence, we should find out if there are others that are qualified and available for this kind of training.
Well, I'd like to make the comment that I was impressed by Mary and felt like she would be very good at this. I'm not making that comment at all, that she wouldn't be, but I do feel like it is a lot of money. And so asking the question about, because we've started the process, doesn't that cut us a little more time to do that due diligence? That's why I was asking the question, not with the intent to try to find somebody else necessarily, but that we ought to at least look.
Karen, did you get a sense? I don't remember seeing this. It may well be stated in the proposal what their time frame looks like for starting and or doing some of this.
Yeah, I didn't see a schedule in here, Josh, so that might, that's a concern too, because I don't know if it's going to be able to be completed by the end of the year.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I would agree with David as to the sentiment related to, I think that a good faith effort, and we've been working towards this, and, if we are putting something in play that will be doing the work that we all know we need to do, I think that seems appropriate. And given that we just received a proposal, I think it would be inappropriate for us to vote on it tonight. So I think that we should table it till next week or till the following week and do a little more homework related.
Okay.
This is Ann Carey. Could I make a comment?
Go ahead, Ann. Yeah.
I just think this is an incredibly important training that we're talking about, and it's fine with me if people want to look around and see if other, I don't know these people or anyone else involved in this type of training, but it seems to me that the quality of the people involved and their capacity to work well with the staff and with all members of the town is really the most important issue here, not the dollar amount. Because I think Putney's reputation and going forward is really involved, and I think it's just a very important issue where the skill of the people involved should be uppermost in your mind.
Yeah, thank you. I would tend to agree, and my guess is there are others around. Well, not necessarily around. I'm guessing that would be the tricky part. I'm sure there are others who do this work and have the skill and the qualifications. But if they're traveling from, Burlington or New York or somewhere, then that would probably shift the whole financial equation. Jamie, you had your hand up. I know you know Mary, don't you?
I just wanted to speak to the fact that I remember a couple of months back, I did a statewide search on this topic as a part of the Equity and Inclusion Committee work. I reached out to folks who are friends, whose spouses do this work, people who done this work out in the Bennington area. One of the comments that I heard, which was really interesting and I hadn't considered, was that you can bring people in from all over the country, from other states, from other parts of the state. That one of the things you get when you get Mary and Dottie is you have a region there's their expertise in this region, working with bordering towns, and also both of their commitment to local educational institutions. I've known Dottie for 20 years. I've taken her training. I've taken several anti-bias trainings and different kinds of diversity trainings. Hers was the most profound I've attended because it came at it from an element. She's so deeply grounded in the work, but she's also a psychologist. And so the way that she made those of us who are struggling and bumbling through it feel was really like amazing. So I've never quite experienced another training like it. The combination of them being local, which was what was recommended to us at the Equity Committee, as well as the quality of the trainings I've experienced through them, I just love that combination. Mary's going to co-host, or has co-hosted, the Putney Anti-Racism Book Group, and is going to probably do that in November as well. So the combination is just great. So I just wanted to share that.
Good, thank you, Jamie. If you found others, Jamie, in that research that you did, if you found others that were somewhat local, just out of interest, if you could share that information with Karen so that we could just sort of have a conversation, a little bit of a sort of cross-examination, that would be great.
I will just say the only other person who was local who's known statewide is the Vermont Partnership for Fairness and Diversity. And a lot of folks know, I am embarrassed right now because I've known him for many years, Curtis.
Oh, Curtis Reed.
Yes.
Curtis Reed. Yeah.
My apologies. I approached Curtis for a similar proposal. And Curtis's bar for accepting clients is that they make a 10-year commitment to this work, and that and I asked for more detail, and the bar that he said, I actually was going to send you all the documents and I can forward them to you because it was really educational. The bar he set for the clients he takes statewide and regionally is a really interesting, it was extensive. So I would love to share that with you all because I thought it was important to look at what he really believes this work entails.
That'd be great if you could share that. That would be helpful.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
Because they are currently working with my landlord, I'm aware of another consulting firm in this area who are based in Brattleboro, and I'm simply providing this as information, not as a recommendation, a pro or con. The name is Equity Solutions.
Okay.
And they are based in Brattleboro. They have a website, which is under Equity Solutions VT.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Howard.
All right, so we'll do a little more homework on this and then plan on revisiting this topic at our next. In the meantime, Karen, maybe, well, you and I can talk about this, but maybe we should touch base with Mary and talk about potential scheduling.
Yes.
And what that would look like for them.
Okay.
But it would be helpful to see more stuff from others too. So, all right. Quarterly financials, questions and comments. I have not spent sufficient time on our quarterly financials to either ask intelligent questions or make intelligent comments. So I'm going to refrain from that. David, you got anything?
I've spent some time looking it over, but because this is my first term in Select Board, I have so much to learn about it. I don't have anything to say. Karen and I had a conversation generally today about it, but it's something I need more time for. So
I'm comfortable with the quarterly right at the moment. I don't have any big, concerns. There's a couple line items that are, over budget, like fire gear, but I just put in for a passive equipment grant, which can reimburse for fire gear. And I also put in for security cameras at the town hall and at the wastewater treatment plant. So this is the fall application, and I will find out if we get approved or not. So some of that fire gear will be reimbursed through that grant. But other than that, I really don't have any concerns. And as we get into the budget for fiscal year 22, I don't want to be talking about our current budget and trying to work on that. So right now I'm comfortable, and if anything changes, I'll let you both know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I you know, what time I spent on it, I didn't see anything that leapt out at me as, you know, out of order. So, yeah, and I agree with you. As we get into budget season, we don't want to be thinking about that. But at the same time, David, for you, and you've done this once before already this last year, but you know, there's obviously a lot of overlap year to year, and so the quarterlies are just always a really helpful sort of marker of time and spend on what we're doing and looking at it in sort of the bigger picture of the whole budget. It's just useful to have that familiarity. So,
well, having a third select board member
will be helpful.
This is going to be helpful, so I can bring her up to speed as well, you know, with the current budget. But, you know, I'm going to talk about the audit in a little bit, but all of this is going to tie in together. And I think once we work through it, and David, you know, you're welcome to come to the office anytime, and I can sit down with you. And Josh, same thing with you. You know, anytime there's a question, and that goes for the public as well. You know, if people see something, they can call and ask questions. So,
thank you. Good. You do. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. So that takes us to the town manager's report. Karen.
All right, I'm going to quickly go through this. So Putney Source Protection Plan was submitted to the state of Vermont. It is in draft format. They're going to review it, and if there's any changes, they'll send it back to us. I don't know how long that will take, but that has been done. Dan Adams, he's the gentleman that looked at the black locust tree. I have asked him I'd like to ask him for a quote and a proposal to walk through Putney Mountain and also the 50 acres on Route 5. Now I put on here, like, I'm not necessarily looking for a forest management plan for logging or anything like that, but there are grant funding for this type of plan. And I think it's important for us to do our due diligence, especially on Putney Mountain, to see what's up there, to evaluate, you know, whether we have, you know, emerald ash borers up there, to see what's on the ground, what's standing. And Wyndham Regional Commission too, through zoning, they're looking at the wildlife corridors. So I think it's important to know what's up there, what, you know, what types of animals are, you know, walking through there. And I know we have the trails. So I would like to ask him for an estimate to come up with a forest management plan.
Yeah, I would suggest maybe whether we need an estimate for this or not, but well, maybe asking for an estimate for a forest management plan. I mean, if we are going to potentially give the Putney Mountain property to the Putney Mountain Association, I think what I would be looking for more than a forest management plan is an opinion from him as to what I mean, I would assume he would be reasonably well equipped to make an assessment of whether that would be an appropriate thing for us to do, for example. I think, I guess what I'm saying is I would rather see sort of preliminary information from him rather than a proposal for a forest management plan. I would rather have him, you know, whatever it costs, I'm not saying whatever it costs in the sense of, you know, hey, yeah, let's throw money at it. But, you know, if it costs us a little bit to have him walk those two properties and just give us an idea of sort of an assessment of them from a professional standpoint, I think that would be valuable. And he may say, you know, if you're going to give this to Putney Mountain Association, you don't need a forest management plan because they do that anyway, and or with the other piece of property, you know, just sort of a general assessment of how we should be thinking about them. And I assume he's equipped to do that.
Okay.
Oh, this is Ann.
Hang on a second.
I'm sorry.
Eva had her hand up. Eva, go ahead, and then Ann.
Well, it's important to me to know that somebody who's is a forester who's lived around here, like Tim Morton or Hayden Lake, who lives up near you, Josh, to be walking that land. I don't know if this guy is a forester or not.
He is.
He is.
And he's
And
down
where's he out of?
I believe he's out of Guilford. Is that right, Karen? Do you know?
I know he works for the town of Brattleboro. He does all of their forestry stuff. I'm not sure if it's Guilford or Brattleboro, Josh.
Eva has a good point. I can easily touch base with my neighbor Hayden and see whether he knows Dan, whether he thinks he's the right guy to do that, and or whether, yeah, I guess we should expand that a little bit.
And Putney Mountain might have already done, Putney Mountain Association might have already done that because Dan Healy, who's also a forester now, was on the board there. Dan Healy, yeah. So I mean, it's, yeah.
Yeah, I called Dan Healy, Eva, and we never connected.
If I can make that connection for you if you want. Dan and I are good friends, so.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, he's a wonderful guy, and as I say, he's volunteered. Yeah. I talked to him to volunteer for Putney Mountain Association. We got some good people there. I'm impressed with you connecting with somebody who handles what goes on in Brattleboro, and at the same time, if there's people that have been involved, it'd be nice to.
Well, I think also too an outside opinion. You know, somebody that, you know, but he can always connect with, you know, Hayden Lake or Dan Healy and or Tim Morton.
Yeah.
So.
Well, why not, David? Why don't you touch base with Dan and I'll touch base with Hayden, and then we'll see where we get to from there. Does that sound fair, Eva?
I feel better about that, but I'd like to see what Ann has to say.
Yes, I was going to say, Ann.
Yeah, I was had a good conversation with Lionel Chute about this. He also has a forestry background, and he manages, I think it's 2,000 or 3,000 acres of Sullivan County property, nonprofit property, and does management plans for those and surveys of those across the river. And he had some very good comments. For instance, he was talking about, you know, there's difference between a management plan and a timber appraisal, depending on what you're looking for.
Right, of course.
For the Route 5 land, he thought there should be a community involvement, listing of goals, trying to figure out what should be overall done with that piece of land, and then get a person to do the survey who was oriented by those goals. And he was more articulate about this than I was, and I was thinking maybe I can have him email Karen, or she could call him, Lionel, and just get some of his ideas, because I thought they were quite good.
Yeah, and I don't mind calling Lionel.
Okay.
I will give him a ring because I wanted to talk to him about a different matter as well. But
good. That's perfect.
No, he does have a lot of experience and he has a lot of ideas, and I enjoy having talks with Lionel, especially. Go ahead.
There's certainly also been discussion at the time that we accepted the parcel as a gift that's on Route 5. There was discussion about whether there could be a relationship between that property and the school forest. And, you know, there isn't a clear corridor from one to the other per se, but there are routes from one to the other. So, yeah, no, I think Lionel certainly could comment, but I think that I fully understand what Lionel is saying about there being a difference between a timber assessment and a land use look at it. But I do think that a forester, the right forester, and we've had this discussion in this open meeting forum before, you know, a discussion about both the forestry aspect of it and the land use aspect of it, I think are valuable and important.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, I gotta grab my charger. My computer just told me it's dying, so I gotta go grab a charger. I'll be right back, but go ahead, I can hear you.
All right. Thank you. So David and the public, I am getting ready to put out to bid the mowing and the landscape request for bids for both the town public buildings, properties, and the cemeteries. So this is going to be a 2-year contract. Right now we have a 3-year contract. It goes from calendar year, so January through, well, they start like early May and go through November with mowing and, you know, fall cleanup, okay? And this includes the library. So I'm going to get ready and put those out to bid. And I think it's important that I've asked for them to come back like mid-December so we can budget that line item for fiscal 22. I'm going to save the next one until Josh gets back. So the
I'm
audit,
right here. Go ahead.
all right. So the audit, everything has been uploaded to our auditor, and they will be coming to us on November 12th and 13th to work with us to either get more information and try to wrap that up so they can get it into final format. Virtual town meeting and or in-person venue. So Michael Mrowicki informed me that the state legislative body did pass a bill where it appears that town meeting will be virtual and voting will be by Australian ballot. So I just got that information this week, and Jonathan and I are going to be sitting down and discussing this in more detail. So I hope to have more information to you in the next coming meetings. I've also connected with Emily Zervis down at the library. So if we have to do virtual meeting, Josh and David, so it'd be the select board, myself, Alyssa at the library with BCTV and Emily doing, supporting us with the tech piece of it, technical piece of it. And then probably voting might happen at the fire station, but it's all premature right now. So until I can get some further information and, but I'm already thinking about this because this is going to be huge. And I'm sure the state is going to guide us.
Yeah, and so that law that was passed allows it to happen this way, Karen, but doesn't yet mandate it. Is that right? Or do I? Because I'm guessing that will be a Secretary of State decision or a Secretary of Health. I don't know. Yeah.
And it was a bill, so I'm not certain that it went into law, but it definitely passed.
Okay.
The other thing too in that bill was that so any elected position actually will not require a petition with 5% of the signatures.
Oh, I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some details to it. So I'm going to wrap my head around it with Jonathan, but we'll see what happens. Because the other thing too, Josh, that I've found out about virtual meetings, GoToMeeting does not have a polling mechanism so people can vote. But then again, I don't think it's legal that you can vote virtually, because you would have to, one, do it, like a roll call vote, and two, your callers would have to be identified. So there's some specific details, and I need to do some more research on all of it.
Yeah, I also, I mean, if there were going to be voting at the fire station, for example, I think we would have to be very thoughtful about staggering the time between, I mean, if we were going to have a meeting and discussion and then expect people to vote on it, we'd have to give sufficient time to allow for that to happen, and I'm not sure exactly.
Well, I think what we're going to need to do, if we end up going virtually, we will have to have a meeting in January specific to like a pre-town meeting, especially with the budget and any articles, because we would have to really educate everyone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
To make
Karen?
decision.
Mr. Chairman?
Karen?
Hang on, Fairman, there's somebody before you. Sorry, who's?
It's Aileen, sorry.
Aileen, go ahead.
I just wanted to let you know that Brattleboro actually did their representative town meeting entirely virtually. So you may want to reach out to Peter to find out how that exactly worked out.
Okay. I was thinking about Peter, and I wasn't sure if it was Peter or Patrick I should reach out to.
Well, either of them, they're kind of interchangeable.
Okay, I saw that. I'll start with Patrick.
Okay.
Thank you for that info.
First, Mr. Chairman, regarding Brattleboro is a charter town chartered by the legislature. It is governed by a very specific set of laws. We, on the other hand, are governed by Vermont statute. And in that regard, I would suggest, I'll take the liberty of suggesting that the discussion we are having now is actually speculative. Because first, if there was a bill, but it was not passed, then it has died, because we've now had an election. We have a new legislature. When that happens, all pending legislation dies. The second thing is, regardless of what the Vermont General Assembly does, it is the Vermont Secretary of State's Elections Division who administer town meetings throughout the state under existing Vermont statute. So I would suggest to the town manager that probably the first people you should consult are the Elections Division to find out, A, have they decided anything yet? And if they haven't decided anything yet, what are they considering? Because we are in uncharted territory here. This has never happened before.
So, Mr. Fairman, so in response to your comment, it's Act 162 as enacted by the state of Vermont.
Okay, so it has been enacted.
Yes. Yes.
All right, but nevertheless, our discussion here is speculative because it is the Elections Division who will tell us how we apply that law.
Yes. Yeah, no, I would agree that the Secretary of State's office will. I mean, I think that Karen said, and she's right, she's working with Jonathan on this, because really the majority of the legalities of this fall to him.
Jonathan,
and then the logistics of it fall more to Karen. So I think that, and he's in regular contact with the Secretary of State's office. So I think that we're in good hands as far as exploring that concern. But thank you for that clarification.
Yeah. So moving on, medical insurance enrollment. In your packet were some comparisons, Josh and David. As we move ahead into budget season, we're looking at ways to reduce the budget if possible. And it appears that Blue Cross Blue Shield and MVP Health are two options, and in your packet, there is substantial savings if we choose to switch to MVP, which is about $25,435. So we are looking at that. There are other things in the budget too that we'll be looking at, and we'll be going into more discussion about in the next coming meetings. So I just want to prepare you guys to be ready, because we're going to have some serious talks.
Can you remind me, Karen, just out of, you said it's a $24,000 savings. What's the total line item on that?
So total, if we stay with Blue Cross Blue Shield for the members, the town employees that we have now, the overall cost for the year is $168,714.47. Now, if we go to MVP, the total will be $143,279.17.
And I know it's premature at this point, but I think I've heard you say before that that is, for all practical purposes, identical might not be the right term, but very comparable coverage. Is that correct?
Very comparable. Yeah, they're almost mirrored.
Okay. Yep. All right. Well, we'll be seeing that in the budget season, I'm sure.
You will.
All right. Is that all?
I have two other items I just want to add. So the Planning Commission meeting is going to happen in person on November 10th at 7 p.m. at the Putney Fire Department. And I'm saying this because if anybody is interested, they can come to this meeting and sit in, and if we're still looking for members. So I'm inviting the public, if you want to attend the Planning Commission meeting on November 10th, 7 p.m. at the Fire Department, please come. Josh and David, I have from People's United Bank the omnibus, which is the forms for Jules Lavoie, the new treasurer. I need your signatures on this paperwork in order for him to sign checks.
Okay.
And to be on the bank account. So we might want to make that announcement again that we do have a treasurer. Jules Lavoie was appointed 2 weeks ago. And Alyssa Harlow will be the assistant treasurer.
Good.
So if you both can stop in the office and just sign off on this paperwork, I'd appreciate it.
Sounds good.
That's all I have.
I know I always come right in, but you probably have to remind David once or twice.
Nice try, Josh.
All right, and now that leads us to other business. Is there any other business that anybody would like to raise? I don't see, let's see, everyone. Oh, okay, I don't see anything. Eva, you've got something?
Yes, once again, I'd like to thank the two of you, David and Josh, for your public service. So few people are willing to step up. That's why we have openings on the Planning Commission and so on and so forth. And I really appreciate you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I concur.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alice and Eva.
So I was gonna.
Oh.
Not sure what that was.
I was gonna third it.
Oh, thank you.
First, a second, and a third.
Well, I have to say, we do spend a little time on these meetings online, but it is a pleasure to have you all here at these meetings and get the input, because typically select board meetings in normal times are really just the select board and the town manager sitting at town hall. So I do think it's created a new model, and we'll have to, as things hopefully return to normal, we'll have to explore how we can have a virtual component so that we can allow, because it certainly makes it much more accessible. So, and that is helpful and meaningful, I find. So thank you all for being here. Next would be executive session. Do we need an executive session?
No, I had it on here, but you've gone ahead and appointed the select board. So I think the select board member, I think we're fine.
Okay, good. So that would put us, our next meeting date is November 18th, 2020. And this reminds me, Mr. Fairman had pointed out, Karen, at one point, that our meetings are, instead of being listed as, he may have pointed this out to you as well, instead of being listed as just every other Wednesday, they need to be listed as specific days of the month, i.e. the first and third Wednesdays or something like that. And I don't know that that always works for us, given that we do every other, but by open meeting law, public meeting law, we're supposed to have them listed that way. So we should just look at what the implications of that are.
I'll look at the website. I thought it said bi-weekly, but
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, right. But it's supposed to specifically state which days it is, not just that it's bi-weekly. I don't know.
Right. And we have a calendar too, so maybe we can utilize that.
Yeah.
On the website. Okay. I think Alyssa might have something to say.
Alyssa?
Well, if you did that, that would make it so on the months where there was an extra week, we would only have to have 2 and not 3.
Right.
Because if you said it's the first and the third, then there's never going to be another one. So that would be okay.
So is that where I make a motion to do this?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
I have the open meeting law right here. The time and place of all regular meetings subject to this section shall be clearly designated by statute, charter, regulation, ordinance, bylaw, resolution, or other determining authority of the public body, and this information shall be available to any person upon request. Now, what that means is you can't say every other Wednesday, because there's no way to determine which Wednesdays that is.
Right.
That's the difficulty.
Right. So I guess we have to, if we're going to continue on the every other Wednesday, which I know David and Alyssa would disagree with, but it might be the more sort of consecutive and therefore more appropriate way to do it. Because if the problem with that, Alyssa, and I don't disagree with you, but the problem is if then we end up with 3 weeks between meetings and we haven't signed warrants, then that creates a little bit of an issue for us. So I don't know. I mean, I'm open to doing it differently, but we just have to be clear about it, I think was the point of it being brought up. But anyway, sorry to throw a wrench in the works. So next meeting date, November 18th, which is 2 weeks from tonight, 5:30, right here, live on GoToMeeting. And other than that, David, you want to move to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
All right, I'll second that, and I'm guessing there's no discussion, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much for being here, and thanks, Alyssa.
Good night.
Good night. Thanks, Karen.